Recently, I've seen lots of videos popping up with titles like How Not to Get Bored of Minecraft or How to Keep Minecraft Survival Interesting, and this video will probably be called something similar. But it got me thinking, I've been playing this game for so many years now, and I still keep coming back, so I thought I'd share a few thoughts on what makes solo, vanilla, survival Minecraft so special to me. First of all, I think I should just say that I've had loads of survival worlds before. Some have looked great, and some have looked not so great. I am not the sort of person who starts one world and sticks it out forever, and I think that's fine. Coming back to these old worlds was super nostalgic, and I think it's important not to delete your old worlds if possible. It really takes you back in time to walk through the old builds and reminds you of where you were when you made them. But now that we've got that out of the way, I want to move on to what I think is the most important thing for a survival world, and that is to have a story. This is my current survival world, and it is 1,575 days old, and the world started right here in this taiga forest. I'm a huge fan of The Legend of Zelda, and when I built this area, it was supposed to be the magical forest like the Korok forest. The story was that this tree was the oldest thing in the land, and that I would make my home within it. It was a pretty simple idea, but having it as a starting point kept drawing me back in to expand the world more and more. And so I moved on from the tree, and I built a village hidden away in the forest. This is where I kept my first villagers, but the story was that they had made their home under the tree, and all of the rest of the world had forgotten they existed at all. And from this starting point, the world just grew and grew. Eventually I moved out of the forest. I had found a hill in a field nearby and decided this would be where a kingdom should be built, one that lived near the forest but never entered. And over time, the kingdom itself made more stories. The castle on top of the hill was where the royal family lived. They had a throne made of pure diamonds and had their banners up all over the city. The city had poor areas where houses were made from mud and all packed close together, and richer areas where the houses were made of quartz and the grass was cut perfectly. There had to be a cathedral so that anyone living inside the walls could go if they wanted to. There would be gardens to visit, and boats coming in with trade to keep the city alive. Needless to say, I wouldn't have kept this world going so long if it didn't feel alive, if it didn't have a story that drove it forward and brought me back to build more and more. The world is alive and connected, and that brings me on to the second thing that stops me getting bored in a world, keeping everything connected together. There are plenty of ways to travel huge distances incredibly quickly in Minecraft. You can walk through the nether, and before long you're thousands of blocks from home. In the later game, you can pick up an elytra and just fly off to distant parts of your world. These are great for exploring, but starting a new project off somewhere that I will never see my base again makes me feel like I've started a whole new world, just without the fun of the early game. Back in my current survival world, when I moved from the forest to start building the kingdom, I made sure to have a path connecting the two, changing from a muddy forest path into a stony, better maintained path near the city. Having this made sure that I always knew my old buildings were still there, and that I was just expanding on what I'd already built by starting a new project. Eventually, as time went on and I had gathered more materials than I knew what to do with, I decided I wanted to start another giant project once again. But like before, I wouldn't start this new project until it was connected to the city by a road. So I made a pathway through the farmlands and even dug a giant tunnel for the path to pass through this mountain, until I eventually reached the place where I wanted my next giant build to go. I love to make maps of my worlds, and having giant roads connecting all of my buildings and areas together makes them look so much better. It also shows really clearly that your world is a world, completely unique and all connected together. And that brings me on to the final thing that keeps me constantly coming back to this game. It's not the giant cities or the ridiculous mega builds, but it's the little things. Scattered all over my world, usually just off the pathway, I have little campsites. These took only a few seconds to put together, but they add so much for me. They bring the world to life, and I can imagine travellers stopping to rest at these sites as they journey between the different places in this world. These are just one example of tiny things you can add to your world to keep it interesting and immersive. They don't require loads of time or for you to be a great builder, but when you come across one of these at night when travelling your roads, they feel just as big a part of your world as any mega base. Another small detail you can add to worlds are little boulders like this, stones piled up on the side of the road, giving you something to look at as you travel. Is it naturally forming, or did someone put it there? It can give your world a bit of history and mystery, and again takes just seconds to put together. I mentioned this earlier when talking about the story of a world, but using banners is another small detail you can add to add so much to a world. Here I made one banner early in my playthrough, which has been copied and spread all over this world. It is all over the city and it's on my shield. It makes the world feel lived in, and it's something that immediately reminds me why I keep playing as soon as I log back in and see it again. Probably my favourite small detail to add into a world is lampposts on the side of roads. These add so much, and while they admittedly are not as quick or easy to build as some of the other little details, they are well worth it in my opinion. They keep the roads lit at night, which means you can travel night and day across your landscape. They take what would otherwise be quite a dull and desolate path and make it seem so much more real. These for me are so important because, like all the other small details I mentioned, eventually are forgotten about. You walk past them and don't even think. They blend into the world and it seems like they've always been there. The final small thing you can add to your worlds to keep them interesting and stop yourself from getting bored is characters. Naming your animals, naming your villagers, and most importantly, naming your pets gives you something to constantly want to come back for. And so those for me are what keeps Minecraft so interesting. Ultimately, it's a game without a story, which means you get to make your own. You can craft and mold your world any way you want, and you can play the game however you want to. If you're bored of survival, then that's just fine. I think it's inevitable that you get bored of a world eventually, and that's okay. No one's world lasts forever. But if you've created something that feels real and special to you, it will last a whole while longer. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it to the end, that's amazing. I really hope you enjoyed it, and please consider leaving a like or even subscribing if you did. I had a lot of fun making this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.